Well, hello again. It's been quite a bit, hasn't it? I was a bit busy, taking my creative process regarding videos and mangling it beyond recognition. Well, anyways, back on topic, I consider myself just a bit of a gamer. Yeah, I nearly have 1,000 hours in the Binding of Isaac, and I still haven't 100% completed it. What's the issue? And across my long experience in the field, I have come across many different things. Some of them I consider complete masterpieces, and others, not so much. And you know, there is one specific umbrella term for games that have always been in the midst of contention, something that has been an ugly byproduct of corporate greed. An evil that twists any concept and idea given into it into something meant only to leech off of those caught into its web. Yeah, that's right, I'm talking about freemium games. This obnoxious-sounding term is used to describe any business model which offers customers a limited product for free, and then places the rest of it behind transactions. These hilarious little examples of how capitalism ruins absolutely everything have been around for quite a while, even going beyond games. But if I talk about those other examples, this video will turn into an endless rant about conglomerates in general. Oh boy, am I already getting sidetracked. So, some may know this type of thing under the more descriptive term of pay to win, where you can shortcut progression or gain an advantage for some doubloons and your soul. So hey, I bet you are simply frothing at the mouths to hear my deranged ramblings about this something which I am certain you give a damn about. But before I get the hell on with this video, I'd like to give a disclaimer. There is a reason why I worded freemium as an umbrella term, because a lot of these games have a lot of aspects that, while not exactly fitting within the definition, still work in tandem. But hey, we're better to start than the tip of this iceberg of madness, microtransactions. Wait, iceberg? Microtransactions are something of a constant in these types of games. Yes, true, a lot of games employ these types of tactics to varying degrees of scummery, depending on whether or not the company has the words arts and electronic in them. In basic terms, credit card or banking account goes in, and pieces of digital content come out. Oh, but wait, it isn't quite that simple. Ever heard of obfuscation of cost, you dingoid? Were you talking to me? You see, being the money out players isn't exactly enough you want to maximize that green. You also need to make it as difficult as possible for players to know just quite how much money they're spending. But, how do you do that? Steal their account info and commit fraud? Well, no, but I'm certain companies wish they could. Besides, some of them find out other ways to steal money. You see, this is where our legally gray, morally evil protagonist comes into play. In-game currency. This little concept isn't evil on its own. In fact, currency exists in pretty much every game in some form. But as I said earlier, capitalism corrupts all, and combine that with the proclaimed root of all evil, and you have a portal straight to corporate hell. So as you see, in many of these games you can't actually buy things up front with some exceptions. Instead, you buy it through this game's in-game currency. Therefore, making it so you need to buy the funny coins with actual money, and then you can buy what you are looking for. This first off ensures that you will probably need to buy more than you need to, since you can only buy fixed amounts of these stuff in certain cases. But more importantly, this allows you to muddle with the perception of what every one of these so-called items is worth. Now you're not spending $2 on a bunch of pixels, you're spending 20 piss cubes. Wait, do you hear that? It kinda sounds like this next bulletin point on my list. So how about those currencies themselves? I've narrowed down 2 different categories for them. You have your basic currency that you get pretty easily, either found commonly through playing the game or by other means. And then you have the funny shinies. These funny shinies, which could also be called rare currency if you are mentally sound, are much harder to obtain. Typically, you'll need to go specifically out of your way to get these at all, and sometimes you can't even consistently obtain them if you don't straight up buy them. At its most basic, you just have 2 of these, most of the time taking the form of coins and some sort of gemstone. The coins you'll be spending on basic stuff, like upgrades or power-ups, and the gemstones you'll be spending on all the tingly premium stuff that increases the hilarious brain chemicals. But if you have more currency that all buys their own specific things, then that means the players will need to spend more money on each individual one or bundles of them. I'm a genius! Oh, also throw in some resources you need to gather as well, just from additional flavor. Okay, and so what? You can pay money to progress faster. You can just play the game normally, and these complaints don't apply, right? Right? Well, don't worry, our pals at Nondescript Gaming Company have solved that issue. You see, if players don't want to pay $10 for boxes of piss cubes, you simply just have to make them want to. And what better way to do that than using a Desmos graphing calculator? That's right, I'm talking about the difficulty curve. The function of a difficulty curve is simple. As a player gains experience or grows stronger throughout the game, they should progressively face a harder and harder challenge. Typically speaking, you want this graph to be steadily going up, either linearly or exponentially, depending on what you're going for, with the beginning part of the curve lowered down to ease players into things. So just throw that all out the window. Instead, typically, the difficulty curve should look roughly like this. Well, isn't that surely hilarious? Typically speaking, these games will often begin as normal, not being too difficult as to ease the player into the experience, get them hooked on the premise. And then, you hit them with a horrendous difficulty spike that can't be overcome with your current loadout. This is where you begin the grind set, baby. At this point, the player pretty much has to halt their progression in-game, to specifically start doing certain missions and levels over and over in order to get the necessary currency and resources to get better at the stuff so you can get over that spike. As the game progresses, it becomes harder and harder to get this so-called better stuff, which means that you spend more time grinding and less time, well, progressing. Hell, sometimes these games will implement a sort of you get to play the game coin system. These most of the time are a sort of self-regenerating resource that you need to expend in order to play levels and missions. And that reminds me, a while back I made a video on that beta build of Plants vs. Zombies 3 that was out a while ago, and in that build was the brain system, where dying would result in losing a brain, and losing all your brains would not allow you to play further until you got more. And I made this point about it. Another system that contributes to my fear is the brain system. Especially in later levels, being locked out of playing the game for 20 minutes because I died too much due to the issues stated above feels a bit too punishing. For me, the entire punishment of losing a level is the fact that you have to start it over once more, but you are free to try a limitless amount of times. This encourages players to experiment when they find trouble, therefore learning even more about the plants because they have the freedom to do so. The actual reason behind this, at least in my mind, is one thing: time. If you're out of the loop, time is a strange metric to measure particles in the universe changing state. This can apply to many things. For example, over the course of 4.5 billion years, uranium-238 will decay into radium-226. Another example is you, whom I assume is not at the current moment a mind scanned into the computer to live eternally. Over the course of what is currently a bit under 200 years, you'll go from being what is scientifically known as being alive to what is scientifically known as dead. I'm dead! And what this package of gigabytes on your system of choice has the fuck to do with this long-winded tangent is that it's designed to waste as much time as possible and make you feel every second. Not only do you need to wait to be done with grinding in order to start playing the game again, but in between grinding sessions you need to wait for your ability to play the game to recharge, equating to a whole lot of time spent waiting over the course of you playing the game. Or, well, you could also, you know, fork over the cash. Yeah. Why spend several hours doing that when you can just spend an indefinite amount of money, skip all that, and maybe get better stuff as a result too? Impatient beings by nature do not want to wait. Ask the Hollow Knight fandom about that. If you inconvenience them enough, they'll most likely crack. And there are more ways you can straight up annoy people into paying up. For example, you can play constant advertisements in-game that'll disrupt the flow until they buy something, meaning you still get money when they're not paying, and when they eventually do pay, now you've broken that first wall. When you pay once, you're most likely to pay again. And hey, have you ever heard of gambling? It is this fun thing adopted by casinos in which people pay to enter for the small chance of becoming a big shot. This can take many forms, sometimes taking inspiration from the mother machines, and sometimes it's the form of big-chested anime girls. That's it with the weird look. However, gambling in general is a gigantic rabbit hole that I do not want to dive into right now, so I say go check out someone who actually knows what they're talking about. In short, I hate this type of business model. Like, really hate it. It basically goes against every design principle I believe in, throwing them to the side in order to prioritize profit. It's greedy and horrid, twisting fun into a pile of flesh to exploit the gullible. And I have a strange fascination with them. Okay, I can't exactly put my finger on it. Maybe it's the joy in digging through the dirt to find the speckles of decent gameplay. Maybe it's growing stronger in a chaotic way that makes your experience unique. Maybe I get a sense of rebellion by going through one of these games completely free to play, or I enjoy the challenge. Or hell, maybe I'm an insect-brained fool who gets neuron stimulation from shiny-looking pixels. It's honestly kinda sad. If you ripped out some of the microtransactions from these games, you'd get a pretty good product. Oh yeah, roguelikes! The similarities between roguelikes and these types of games are strangely prevalent. Your progression is based on random chance, with you unlocking more and more things that allow you to unlock even more things, creating your own little story, progressing in a chaotic, yet natural way. Even outside roguelikes, you have modders who dust off the scum from other games to provide the experience you wanted going in. A developer known as GoodP2, for example, has been developing 2 different mods for Plants vs. Zombies 2. And hell, even though they're a bit difficult, they still are an absolute blast to play, which proves my point. Typically speaking, if games go out of their way to inconvenience you for money, my usual line of thought would be to not even bother. But there's just some strange allure. Perhaps because I don't play these games often, it's like a palate cleanser. Maybe there is enjoyment to be found in the bad. Maybe getting out of the mindset that you're playing a competently designed game is key to finding enjoyment in these. But maybe I'm not any different from anybody else. Maybe in my thought that I have subverted the big company person people, I've done nothing more than play right into their hands. Maybe I am just another puppet in their court. And maybe these games are just terrible. I don't know, I'm a space moth for crying out loud.